Send in the clowns. Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage and I just want to make people laugh and bring joy to the world, just as Joaquin Phoenix Arthur Fleck wants to do. But look how that turned out. I think the best way for me to lay out my feelings about Todd Phillips' Joker is to take a little detour. My favorite live-action superhero movie is still Sam Raimi's 2004 Spider-Man 2. None other ever felt as genuine, heroic and good-hearted. Peter is dealt so much shit in that movie, and not only is he constantly struggling to give up his costume, his responsibility, he even does so for a brief amount of time. But people need him, New York needs him. He doesn't just save the day, but he also inspires and brings out the best in people. In my favorite scene of that movie, Spider-Man passes out after he spent all his energy stopping a train and saving the people inside. He even loses his mask, revealing his secret identity. But the good people of New York are grateful, they are inspired, and they help him and keep his secret safe.
It's good to have you back, Spider-Man.
In many regards, Joker is the absolute opposite to this. This is a film about the worst in us, about our society failing to help the people who need help the most. It isn't good that inspires, it is the anger, the violence, the murder. I know this is Gotham, but it's basically an alter ego of New York City again. This is the frustrated masses finding a catalyst in a murderous clown figure. It's the superhero movie antithesis, and I really enjoyed how it played in this regard. This is not my worldview, I'm the Spider-Man 2 guy, the one who's at home in Frank Capra movies. But from time to time, even I want to see the world burn, and Joker is an immensely captivating, and from an audiovisual standpoint, absolutely beautiful experience. I saw it in IMAX and it was gorgeous. Seeing the title Joker taking up the entire screen, from top to bottom, left to right, right in your face, was like a punch in the stomach. And the following 2 hours have a lot of those. Or maybe it's more the constant atmosphere of bleakness, the stirring up of terrible things to come, the look into the abyss, the look inside a man who's already on the brink of madness at the beginning, but who will get so much worse. It's a film about isolation, lack of empathy, lack of care, lack of truth. Joker has Joaquin Phoenix at the helm and he's in almost every frame. His mannerism, his laugh, his physical transformation and the little dances that he took from watching old Fred Astaire movies. You simply can't take your eyes off him. But the movie also has the highly disturbing, unsettling score by the Icelandic composer Hildur Gunnadóttir, who also did the music for this year's HBO miniseries Chernobyl. It's a score that's very prominently used, and there's probably not one single happy note on it. It's like Arthur says,
"All I have are negative thoughts."
The score takes you into the dark, lonely mind of a man who's losing the last few remaining straws of sanity. Well, there are a few positive tunes in form of songs. Charlie Chaplin's famous song Smile is in here, because remember, even if times are hard, one should never lose his smile. Joker also has astounding cinematography done by Lawrence Sher. The film takes place in 1981 and the period setting, the streets of Gotham, the absolute loneliness in a huge city like this are realized marvelously. Gotham is boiling over. You hear news reports about ongoing conflicts in the background. There are huge garbage bags everywhere. Homeless people even use them as pillows to sleep in. Rumors about giant rats are spread on TV. The way everything is filmed and presented has an organic, real feeling to it. Filmmaker Todd Phillips and his team specifically wanted to avoid CGI. This is the opposite of a fun, action-filled summer blockbuster. Yet, it's also a giant immersive visual treat that should be experienced on the biggest screen. They went with a normal widescreen format, no cinema scope, and I think this creates a more intimate feeling. You are with Arthur Fleck all the time, sharing the moments that will forever transform him into the Joker. Many people always wanted to see a villain origin movie. Not one for an anti-hero, not someone who's evil, but really not that bad after all. And certainly no Maleficent. Joker is that movie. A bleak, brutal, disturbing film. And there's not much to laugh about here. It's a psychological drama / thriller about the mentally troubled clown Arthur Fleck. It was always known that the film is very heavy influenced by Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver, as well as The King of Comedy. It follows many story beats of those two movies, and the casting of Robert De Niro in the supporting role of talk show host Murray Franklin cements that, and it's also a neat switch around. In The King of Comedy, it was De Niro's character who was obsessing with the talk show host played by Jerry Lewis. Now it's Arthur Fleck who's imagining De Niro's character Murray as a father figure, imagining being on his show and hugging his idol. It's weird to say, but if Joker would have done more with this aspect of the story, it would have probably been too much of The King of Comedy. Yet as it is, I felt it was a little bit underwritten, and maybe also a bit far-fetched, because the idea that that show rather randomly chooses to play a video recording of Arthur bombing at a comedy club is a bit strange. A video of someone completely unknown trying out some jokes. I mean, sure, Arthur's attempt at stand-up comedy went terribly wrong, but still. But I'm also not familiar with American talk shows from that era, so maybe it's fine. It should also be said that Joker is far from being subtle. This is a very broad movie that pretty much goes through the whole checklist of becoming a psychopath or serial killer. Arthur is beaten up on the street, he loses his job, he's being rejected by other people, he's living with his mom, and so on. But in this case, I could see past this reliance on very known tropes, because the film looks and feels so great, because Phoenix is so hypnotic in the role, but also because while this is clearly in the vein of Taxi Driver, it still very deliberately moves in the realm of a comic book adaptation. It isn't based on any particular Joker storyline, but it plays with the iconic character status in pop culture, with its relationships to other comic characters, and it's also realized in a heightened fashion. It is more grounded than pretty much all recent Marvel films, and more at home in the way Christopher Nolan unfolded his Batman universe, but it's still tied to its comic book origin, and that was a big positive for me, because otherwise it wouldn't have felt right for me just to borrow the Joker character for a completely down-to-earth character drama. If you take the Joker, you should work and play with his stuff as well. Yet they are able to create a new incarnation that has familiar shades, but is still very different from the ones that came before. Now, since the movie is already out, I want to go into some spoiler territory from here on. If you haven't seen it yet, I would definitely recommend it.
Is it just me? Or is it getting crazier out there?
As I've said earlier, Joker uses many very obvious or simply flat tropes to portray this troubled soul going over the edge. I didn't mind that Zazie Beetz' character has only very little screen time. I actually liked it a lot how the film shows Arthur and her relationship. But I have to add that I found it to be rather obvious that either some parts of it or all of it must be only in his imagination. Arthur wasn't on his medication any longer, and fantasizing that this woman is having a good time with him and supports him when his mother is in the hospital makes sense. But then the movie treats the revelation of this as a way bigger twist than it actually is. We really don't need flashbacks showing us that she wasn't with him in the first place. It's just a minor element, but it bothered me. What I did like though was how certain themes and situations are repeated throughout the film. Arthur sees a father figure in De Niro's character, but then he also learns that Thomas Wayne might be his real father, and he tries to reconnect with him. In the end, both longings prove to be fatal, and not just that, he also learns that his mother, who seemed to be the only kind soul to him for a long time, has lied to him ever since, and his whole identity is breaking apart. I loved how he was trying to talk to a social worker at the beginning and then again at the very end. From the get-go, Arthur seems doomed, but through Phoenix's performance and some little moments, there's this frail hope that he might turn his life around. Arthur is dependent on medication, he has mental problems, he needs someone to talk to, but society doesn't deem such issues to be important enough to invest in a supporting system for people who need help. Again, the movie is far from being subtle when it comes to this, but I do think it has something to say about the shortcomings in the healthcare sector. At the beginning, Arthur could still be saved. He needs to talk to someone who listens to him. In the very end, when he talks to a psychiatrist, there's nothing left to talk about. His journey is complete, and the person wouldn't get him anyway. To follow Arthur, to follow Phoenix on this downward spiral is exhilarating, if you're someone who likes dark movies, of course. It might have rather generic psychopath tropes in it, but where he finally ends up being is so frightful and intense, and at the same time devilishly joyful. The whole controversy about its depiction of violence, about the idea that the audience might sympathize with a murderer, that the movie might even inspire people to kill in real life, is honestly very old and very tiresome. Yes, we can sympathize with him, I would even say to a very high degree. Some people of course more than others. But it doesn't mean at all that we also approve of his actions. This is one of the exciting things about art, about cinema. We can relate to different characters, to good ones as well as to evil ones. We can even live out some of our darkest thoughts or frustration through them in a fictional form. It doesn't mean we want to do that for real. This doesn't mean that sick people who have a lot of serious mental problems can't be triggered by art, by music, by movies. Of course they can, but it's not the movies that made them this way in the first place. But back to the actual film and my praise that this version of the Joker is yet another interesting new interpretation that's different in many aspects. I think all previous film versions had him as a crime lord, some incarnations more than others. Now this film is an origin story and it focuses on Arthur Fleck, the isolated individuum in a world that seems to get crazier by the day. The film is painting his portrait in rather broad strokes, but I really liked how casually the actions of Arthur and his public persona, the man in a clown makeup that killed 3 rich guys, how that is the final ignition for the ruthless violent revolution that's happening in the movie. Arthur isn't even involved at first. He says he's not political, but his departure from civilized society, his submitting into raw, brutal violence, of not taking it anymore, that's what caused the revolution of the people. The film has this rich versus poor class struggle aspect ingrained in its DNA, and I liked how it's in there but not front and center. The movie seems to be a heightened version of our world. It's an angry world, a world that swallows people, a world that goes from bad to worse. Though at least Arthur is finally finding some recognition in the end. He's becoming the person he might be able to live with. It's a grim film and it shows how the world might burn if we don't do something. Is it glorifying the Joker as a messiah for the poor masses? I don't think so. The night is darkest just before the dawn. That the film includes the murder of Bruce Wayne's parents isn't just cheap fan service. It shows that this story is far from over and that there will be light at the end. Of course I know that this Joker movie is a standalone, but I mean the possible story in the future of this film. Joker is definitely a film that had a big impact on me. So in German I'd say, Joker ist eine betörend, beunruhigende und gleichzeitig filmisch absolut hinreißende Comic Verfilmung. Joaquin Phoenix ist großartig und tröstet über so manche Schwäche hinweg. I give Joker 8 out of 10. It's more like 8.1, but I don't do that.
You can say that again, pal.
If you just smile.
Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about Joker. And also let me know your ranking of all the Joker performances. You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Letterboxd simply at the Jimmy Cage. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.